I've got something a bit different for you today. This is a channel about cities, but there are times when even I occasionally want to get as far away from civilization as possible. So today I'm asking the question, which cities give you the most access to the great outdoors? And specifically, which cities have great transit access to amazing hiking opportunities? This is honestly one where I had no idea how I was going to approach it or what I was going to find, but it does end up being a very entertaining journey, and it's all coming up next. This is City Nerd, weekly content on cities and transportation. Viewer suggested topics always welcome, and you're just gonna have to trust me when I say I've had more suggestions to do something around access to natural areas and trailheads, and particularly car-free access, than pretty much any other topic I've ever done. And the suggestions were kind of all over the map, so I had to invent a whole way to analyze it and make a story out of it. And I'll explain the whole methodology in just a bit, but first, a brief thesis. The more city-like our cities are, meaning the more compact and efficient and less sprawling they are, the less impact they have on surrounding natural areas. In other words, cities should be cities so that nature can be nature. I think of cities less as the antithesis of wilderness than as a precondition to being able to preserve it. So you can definitely be a person who loves all the culture and amenities and opportunities that cities provide, and you can still place a high value on getting out into the great outdoors and doing, I don't know, whatever it is you all do out there. Because just being real, this is not my wheelhouse. I do love a hike in a beautiful scenic area, but after about 2 hours, I'm good and I just kind of want to get back to civilization. I've always been like this, and I do fully understand that it makes me kind of a weirdo, meaning weird enough to start a YouTube channel about cities. So I guess the upside is you all get to be entertained by my thinly veiled psychosis once a week. Okay, and to be clear, I have some skepticism around the idea of transit to, say, national parks or wilderness areas. I mean, the user experience of any of those places is better when there's fewer people, while the whole point of, say, a grade-separated metro system is to connect high-density nodes, so trying to find good transit connectivity to a high-quality trailhead is a bit of a fool's errand. But rest assured, these places do exist, and I do have a list of them. So let's talk about what I did. Now, every city has big urban parks where you can go for long walks or hikes, but you're not really getting away from the city, so that's not what I'm looking for. What I'm looking for is access to literally the best trails in the United States. So this is not an endorsement, but I did use the AllTrails list of the best trails in the US as a jumping off point. I do use AllTrails on the rare occasion when I am researching hiking spots, and they usually steer me right. So the question I asked was, which significant metro areas in the US have the most and best access to these natural areas? I assigned each of the top 100 trails to the nearest metro area and gave a point for each. I gave a bonus point if the trailhead is within 100 miles of downtown, meaning pretty doable for a day trip by car. And I gave 2 bonus points if the trailhead was reasonably accessible by transit, meaning a 2-hour journey or less. And I also had a threshold criteria for even making this list, which was a metro area had to have at least one top 100 trailhead accessible by transit. There were 8 metro areas I found that met this criteria, so let's get into it. Number 8, Los Angeles, and this is all on the strength of the city's connection to the number 62 trail in the US, the Eaton Canyon Trail in the Eaton Canyon Natural Area north of Pasadena. For transit, I searched for service to each of these trailheads from what I think is a reasonable approximation of the city center at 8 a.m. on a Saturday, but your mileage will vary, quite literally, depending on where in the metro area you live, especially in a region as polycentric as Greater LA. From downtown LA, this is mostly a trip on the A-Line train, and it's a 2-mile walk from Sierra Madre Villa Station, or you can transfer to a bus to cover that last 2 miles, but you were planning on walking a lot anyway, right? Number 7 is San Diego, and this is mostly on the strength of a rail connection that gets you pretty close to the number 50 trail on the list, the Torrey Pines Beach Trail Loop in the Torrey Pines State Natural Reserve. This is in the La Jolla neighborhood, so you're actually not even leaving the city. Coaster Regional Rail or the San Diego Trolley Blue Line will get you pretty close, and you can transfer or walk it from there depending on how intrepid you're being. The other trail that puts San Diego on this list is the Potato Chip Rock Trail at Lake Poway Park, but it's a pretty convoluted bus trip from most places in the metro area. 6, San Francisco, and you've got a couple options here by transit. The number 79 trail on the list, Mission Peak Loop in the Mission Peak Regional Preserve, is accessible by BART at the Warm Springs South Fremont Station, and the number 94 trail, Land's End at the Golden Gate National Recreational Area, is basically in San Francisco and is accessible by bus. There are a couple other top 100 trails that are around 100 miles or less from the Bay Area, and Yosemite's a little far for a day trip in my opinion, but probably pretty convenient if you're doing a longer expedition. 5. Salt Lake City, which is almost surprisingly low since some of the most spectacular hiking in the US is in the state of Utah. I'll come back to that a bit later in the video though. Salt Lake does get credit for some of those spots, but they're 200 plus miles away, so it's getting a bit far afield from the intent of this video. There are still top 100 level hiking trails closer in the Wasatch Mountains though, and here's one that has decent transit access from the city. The Bell Canyon Trail connecting to the Lower Falls and the Bell Canyon Reservoir. Number 4, Portland, Oregon. Partly this high on the list due to proximity to the trails at Silver Falls State Park down near Salem, including the number 8 trail in the US, the Trail of Ten Falls. A little distant to be transit accessible from Portland though. What really puts the city here is good access to the Falls Corridor in the Columbia River Gorge National Scenic Area, including Multnomah Falls Trail and the Waukena Falls Loop. Brief aside here, I rarely talk about my previous career on this channel, but I was the PM for the traffic consultant on this historic Columbia River Highway Congestion and Transportation Safety Improvement Plan, which went final just before the pandemic. The whole study was fascinating. We were trying to deal with what's a fact of life at a lot of popular scenic areas. Overcrowding and too many people trying to all drive there at the same time. Some of the key recommendations have been implemented, like if you're planning to drive, you have to reserve a timed entry slot if you want to be able to park, and there's expanded transit service, and that service does not require a reservation. If you take the bus, you can just show up whenever you please. Proud to have worked on the project. The state DOT was the lead agency, and it's just a small reminder that state DOTs do have staff who are working on things that actually make a positive difference. Anyway, for the purposes of this video, it's all about the Columbia Gorge Express, a transit service that runs from the Gateway Max Light Rail Station to Multnomah Falls, 9 trips a day each direction at time of filming. And since trains between downtown Portland and Gateway are so frequent, it ends up being not much more than an hour trip from the center of the city. Incredible biking out that way too, if you ever come out. Okay, in a minute I'm going to get to the 3 cities that have even better access to the great outdoors than Portland, as well as a couple honorable mentions, and some thoughts on why all this stuff matters so much. Usual reminder to engage the trusty screen elements to boost the discoverability of this content if you're enjoying it, and engage on the usual websites if you want to stay up to date on what I'm up to. I am coming to Atlanta in October, so stay tuned. Okay, one thing I have not addressed directly here is the fact that most of the highest rated hiking spots are just very distant from any major metro area. The locations that show up highest in the All Trails list are in places like Bryce Canyon, Zion, and Arches, all in southern Utah. I wouldn't try to do any of these as a day trip, but your most convenient access from a large metro area is probably Las Vegas, where you also get cool stuff like Red Rock Canyon and Valley of Fire State Park just outside the metro area. And you might have wondered, where is the representation on this list for basically anything in the eastern half of the US? Or maybe you don't wonder that, since the West is unquestionably dominant when it comes to this outdoorsy crap. But there were several entries from the Great Smoky Mountains National Park on the All Trails 100. It's just not really accessible at all from a major metro area unless you think you can swing like Knoxville. The other close call for this list was DC. The hiking at Harpers Ferry National Historical Park makes the 100, and there is transit between DC and Harpers Ferry, West Virginia, but it's a marked commuter bus that appears not to run on weekends, and then only runs in peak commute direction Monday through Friday, so really the opposite of what you need if you're trying to make a day trip out from DC. Although, if you're up for a 6-hour bike adventure in each direction, you can do the Chesapeake and Ohio Canal Towpath or the Washington and Old Dominion Trail, but that's a completely different video. Okay, let's get to the top 3, and there isn't a whole lot separating these cities, so if you think I got the order wrong, just let me know down in the comments, but I did it how I did it. Phoenix, Arizona gets you the best access to Sedona and the Cocochino National Forest, which is extremely well represented on the AllTrails 100. But there are also top 100 type hiking spots in close to Phoenix too, including a couple that are basically within Phoenix itself. The number 15 on AllTrails, the Echo Canyon Trail at Camelback Mountain, only about 8 miles from downtown Phoenix. I mean, you can basically bike or scooter there, weather permitting. But you can also take light rail and transfer to the Route 50 bus to get to the trailhead. Also, the Paestua Peak Summit Trail in the Phoenix Mountain Preserve is in the top 100, and it's even more accessible by transit from downtown, under an hour. So if you're not familiar with the Phoenix area, very underrated for outdoor recreation and very pleasant climate in the months when the weather is dismal in most other parts of the US. Number 2 feels like it should be number 1, so let's talk about this. It's Denver, Colorado. Truly incredible number of top 100 type trails in the areas west of the city, mostly in Rocky Mountain National Park. Now, you can take a bus to the town of Estes Park, which is kind of the gateway to the national park, and the park does have internal shuttle service, but you're already 2 hours and 20 minutes in before you even get to Estes Park. So this is all outside the threshold where I wanted to consider transit at all. Denver did get credit for how relatively close Rocky Mountain National Park is, as well as a couple other recreational areas, but even locations that seem like they should have good transit access, like the Mount Galbraith Loop and Matthews Winters Park, don't seem to get transit service on weekends. The only top 100 trail that did is a good one, the number 16 Royal Arch Trail just outside Boulder, but that was the only one I could find that gets reasonable weekend service. Denver folks, I'm sure you're going to let me know if I missed something. And that leaves number 1, Seattle, which, like Denver, has 15 of the top 100 trails within 100 miles of the city. That includes Mount Rainier, which, when you're in the city, looks like it's right there, but unfortunately is not reasonably accessible without a car, according to this website, which I trust to promulgate only 100% factual information. What I want to talk about here, though, is the Trailhead Direct bus service. You can use the Issaquah Alps line to get to this trail in the West Tiger Mountain area that's just really fun to say, and is in the top 100. The Issaquah Alps line runs out of Mount Baker Transit Center, which is on the Link 1 line as well, so it's a fast connection from downtown Seattle. The Trailhead Direct Mount Si bus is even more convenient. It runs direct from downtown Seattle every half hour on summer weekends, and that bus gets you not only to the Mount Si and to Little Si trailheads, which both rank in the top 100, but you can also just hang out in North Bend, which is a fun time in itself, particularly if you're into David Lynch-oriented tourism. Really though, if there's one overarching theme I want you to take away from today's video, it's that not only can cities and nature coexist side by side, having compact, dense cities and limiting urban sprawl is crucial to keeping the wilderness wild. This is where my friends at Planet Wild come in. Planet Wild is a global community of people who care deeply about the planet and want to give back to nature, and their approach is very cool. Every month, they team up with a new partner organization on a different mission to bring back endangered species, support oceans and aquatic life, or rewild ancient forests and restore biodiversity. Think of it as community-powered crowdfunding for nature. They're very thoughtful about how they come up with candidate missions, and the selection criteria includes things like transformative potential, measurable outcomes, likelihood of lasting impact, and transparency of partner organizations. And as a member of Planet Wild, you get a mission video report every month, so there's a very visual accountability piece to what they do, and it really gives you a chance to see how the contributions from your membership are making a difference. Here's an example. Their work building nesting opportunities and restoring the population of little owls, which are not only an indicator species of a healthy ecosystem, but are absolutely 100% certified adorable. Or if you're opposed to helping cute animals, they also do missions like restoring biodiversity under power line corridors. An insect highway? Now that's highway infrastructure I can get behind. So Planet Wild focuses on small, impactful missions, but at the heart of it, really, is restoring ecosystems and being a good steward of the planet, which, if you really follow what I talk about on this channel, is extremely consistent with the values of low-impact urban living. As they say, the best time to start restoring habitats and increasing biodiversity was, I don't know, before the Industrial Revolution. But the second best time is right now. And as a limited offer, 150 of you will get your first month of a Planet Wild membership for free. So scan the QR code or use my custom link down in the description to become a Planet Wild member, or use my code NERD9 later. The cute animals, the insects, and the planet will thank you. And if you want to watch something uplifting about nature, I'll link a Planet Wild video down in the description as well. And that's all I've got. Thanks for joining today, and thanks as always to the patrons whose direct support gives me the freedom to keep exploring not only different aspects of cities, but literally different cities. Atlanta, I'll be coming your way soon. Keep the great topic suggestions coming. I'll be back with a new episode next week, and I'll see you then.